Hello everybody, it's Debbie Evans here and Rolo is just about here. I think you can see him. I'm just going to continue reading from where I left off yesterday. This is The Secret Adventures of Rolo, Book 3, The Dragon's Pram. Over the next few days I had to be very devious in taking things from the kitchen to feed the hungry hatchling. Crusts of toast, an unopened packet of biscuits from the larder, luckily not in a tin, and more of my doggy biscuits smuggled outside. I even fought a magpie for a suet ball that he'd stolen from the bird table, thinking hatchlings can probably eat anything. I was running out of ideas though, and hoped Yulia would come for us soon. One evening I heard a tapping on the back door. I must have left the garage door open and the cupboard door ajar. I barked to be let out and quickly rounded him up, thankful that no one else had heard him. Imagine the floppy-haired boy's surprise if he discovered he had a baby dragon in the garage. When he returned from his school trip to Salisbury, the floppy-haired boy was very excited about all the knights' tombs he'd seen along the aisles of the famous cathedral, the construction of which had started in 1220, just 5 years after the sealing of Magna Carta. "Do you know what, Mum?" he told the smiley lady, talking to her from his perch on a kitchen stool while she cooked his favourite dinner, shepherd's pie. "What's that, love?" she asked, alternately stirring the mince and mashing the potatoes in a frenzy of activity. "I hope she saves me some mincemeat, and I bet the hatchling would like some too." Something odd I discovered in Salisbury Cathedral today. All of the medieval knights' tombs have something carved at their feet, whether it's an animal or a mythical beast from their family crest. All of them, that is, except one. "Really?" said the smiley lady absent-mindedly as she tasted the mince for seasoning. "I wonder why that might be." Well, even if she wasn't that interested, I certainly was. I raised an ear to listen better, and the floppy-haired boy continued sharing what he'd heard. A little while later I managed to sneak some leftover shepherd's pie out to the hatchling in the garage, and still he kept cheeping at me like a newly hatched chick. "I doubt you can understand me, but it's really important that you keep quiet," I implored as I shut him back in the cupboard in the garage. I went to find Athelstan and told him that the rehoming matter was becoming more urgent, and he said only one more day was required and the new home for the hatchling would be ready. I was relieved and assured him he was secure for the night. Then I told him what the floppy-haired boy had said about the tomb of the knight without a mascot in Salisbury Cathedral. "You better go and find out about the knight then, little pup. You sound as if you're in need of adventure. Go on, back to the 13th century with you. Have you got the orb?" Luckily I'd brought the pink ball, just in case, and I dropped it and moved forwards towards the hole in the base of the tree. Yulia and Da were already there with their lanterns. I had no idea what I might be getting into this time. I seemed to be back at court, but not that of unpopular King John. His successor was a boy called Henry. I decided the best course of action, like on my last visit, was to stay hidden and see what unfolded. I found my favourite hiding place underneath a long trestle table and watched a boy seated high up on the dais, presuming this to be the young king. I hoped fervently that the feasting knights were messy eaters, for I was suddenly extremely hungry and there was a delicious aroma of roasting meat lingering in the air. Beneath the table I found myself nestled in between a pair of large feet, and to my immense surprise a bone was passed down by a big hand and held out for me to take. I took it gratefully, remembering my manners and not snatching. A few other bits of meat followed, and then a bowl of water was handed down and placed carefully on the floor. I looked up into the kind eyes of a man with black curly hair and thought he looked a bit familiar. The kindly man smiled, belched, and then bent down and wiped his greasy hands on me. "Now steady on, that's what greyhounds are for, not me. I'm not a canine serviette." But I remained silent and put up with the rough handling, licking the grease off with great indignation and a look of disdain. When he'd finished eating, the knight got to his feet, scooped me up and tucked me under his arm. I was lifted a very long way off the ground, for he was a very tall man indeed. "Godspeed, Uncle William. What have you got there, a puppy for me?" called the young boy from the dais, and I buried my face in the knight's cloak in case he felt obliged to hand me over. But I needn't have worried. "Good night, my liege," replied the knight, bowing low to his king and nearly dropping me on the floor, but carefully concealing me with this movement underneath his cloak. Suddenly I realised who the tall knight reminded me of. This was King John's half-brother, William Longspay, Earl of Salisbury and Sheriff of Wiltshire, amongst other high offices. "You shall be my faithful hound. I need a mascot. I'm not giving you up to become the young king's pet." William Longspay lifted me high in the air with his hand, supporting my tummy, and then patted me on the rump as he laid me across the pommel of his saddle before climbing astride his big horse. The horse eyed me suspiciously. I gulped. I remembered what happened to faithful hounds, and I wasn't sure I wanted to be one. I was thinking back to my encounter with Prince Llewellyn on the previous adventure. Not much I could do right now, though, as I lay sprawled across this huge horse and held with a firm hand. We galloped off at great speed, and the tall knight made it clear he wanted me to become his companion and ride into battle with him as a lucky mascot against the French or anyone else who might invade. I wasn't sure about any of this. He took me to Salisbury Cathedral. It was even more impressive in the 13th century than it is today, because there was not much around it. The beautiful cathedral completely dominated its landscape, with nothing to detract from its magnificence. "I was here in 1220 when the foundation stone was laid," the knight explained to me as he carried me around the interior to the east end. "This is the plot I've earmarked for my tomb when my time comes, and look, here is the elaborate wooden chest which will hold my bones. And see the great likeness the sculptor is working on now, carving out from a stone a perpetual memory of me. I will be painted in my family colours of blue and gold with lions on my shield. I'm so excited. It's all ready for me, but the one thing missing from this happy scene is you." I had no idea what this knight was talking about. To show you Chantal's drawing. And then I realised what he intended. It seemed that animals didn't like him, whether it was because he was so big and scary or for whatever reason. Every dog he'd ever owned had run away. He wanted the sculptor to copy my likeness so that when his time for eternal rest came, God willing quite a few years hence, the great knight would be depicted with his feet on the unusual little dog he had rescued and was now around like some kind of status symbol. I heard Longspay telling the sculptor that he would bring the little dog tomorrow to sit for a study so that the likeness could be created in position at the feet of the knight for the tomb. I was in two minds about that news. Much as I wanted to make my mark on history and be famous forever, I wasn't sure that I wanted to be commemorated in stone as a medieval knight's footrest. Anyway, I had to get back to my basket, and I was worried about outstaying my visit. I had to find an excuse to get away from the tall knight, and this was proving difficult because he insisted on carrying me everywhere as if I was too precious to use my paws. He even talked of dressing me up in a velvet cloak and making me a suit of armour. Not cool. I could imagine Chickpea and the other dogs laughing at me dressed up like a doll. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a rat scurry across the nave, and I seized my chance. I leapt out from the tall knight's arms. It was a long way to the stone floor, but thankfully I landed on my feet. Longspay called anxiously after me in a shrill voice, but I was on a mission. When the knight caught sight of what I was chasing, he screamed in a most unknightly fashion. It would appear the brave earl with the famously long sword was terrified of rodents. I chased the rat up the aisle, through the tall and narrow nave with its grey stone walls and dark, polished Purbeck marble columns. We were almost at the high altar. I spied the rat cowering behind a column. "Psst, you can go now," I whispered to the quivering rodent. "Go on, Scarpa, vamoose." I waved my paws, shooing the rat away, but it seemed petrified with fear. This was no good. I needed it to disappear. I didn't want to actually have to catch the thing. It was merely the agent of my escape. Go, I hissed again, and turned away, giving it the chance to scurry off into the sanctuary of the altar cloth. I seized my chance, crept down the shadowy steps to the crypt, with the sound of William Longspay's squeal still ringing in my ears. Come back, little doggy, I need you. We will make a fabulous team. If I didn't get out from here fast, I'd be trapped in the 13th century forever with this crazy knight who couldn't keep a pet. No wonder all the others had run away. I had no idea how to get back to the time tunnel, as the entrance was some distance away. But suddenly I spied a tiny light coming from behind one of the tombs. It looked like someone was trying to attract my attention, as the light flickered like some kind of code. Yulia! I thought I'd better come and see what you're up to, as you've been missing for quite a while. I found another entrance to the time tunnel here in the crypt. Let's go, cried the tiny lamp bearer, pleased to have come to my rescue. I fervently wished I could explain to the floppy-haired boy the answer to his question as to why the stone effigy of William Longspay was the only knight in the cathedral not to have an animal to rest his feet on, but alas, I'll have to keep that knowledge to myself. So there we're going to leave it for this afternoon, and I will be back tomorrow, and I might dip into another book. Anyway, Rollo stayed patiently listening all the way through that one. Have a lovely afternoon wherever you are. Thank you. Bye.